McGregor tried to kiss her, that he was rubbing her face, that she resisted.
She said the more that she fought and the more that she struggled, the more that he seemed to like it.
In terms of legacy, I don't think that anybody would want to be remembered for this.
You can't do this and expect to get away with it.
In 2018, Nikita Hand was 29. She was working as a part-time hair colourist in a hair salon in Goatstown in South County Dublin.
She and Conor McGregor knew each other, or more so knew of each other, because they grew up in the same area. They had an awful lot of mutual friends, and from time to time they would comment on each other's Instagram posts, and they knew each other to say hello to, but that was it really.
Saturday, December 8th, 2018 was Nikita Hand's staff Christmas party. They went to the venue, which was in Airfield. After that, they went to the Goat pub, which was across the road from the salon. And when the pub closed, they went back to the salon for what was described in court as the after party.
She'd put up a post from her Christmas party of her in her outfit, which was a red jumpsuit. And she said that Conor McGregor had liked that post and he had commented on that post asking her where she was and what she was doing.
He himself was on a night out. He was with some of his friends from the mixed martial arts scene and another friend, James Lawrence.
Conor McGregor was in the company of a couple of girls. He was hoping that the party would keep going, but they wanted to go home. So he dropped the girls off, and one by one all of his pals ended up going home. And this is the point where I suppose their nights dovetailed.
Nikita Hand was still back in the salon. The party there was starting to die off. It was just herself and another work colleague, Danielle Keeley, left. Nikita Hand said she wanted the party to continue. She was communicating with Mr. McGregor. He asked her where she was. She told him. He said he would come and pick both of them up, which he did. They drove around for a couple of hours. She said the mood in the car was good. They were having fun. They stopped at the home of James Lawrence, and Mr. McGregor went in. He came out with James Lawrence and a bag of cocaine. He got into the car. They shared the cocaine. The mood was good, they were all enjoying themselves, and the car made its way to the Beacon Hotel.
They went up to the penthouse suite, and it was there that there were two rooms, we were told. So the room was described to us as having a living area and then a separate private bedroom space and adjoining doors between the two rooms.
She was expecting there to be more people there. She thought they were going to a party and it was just the four of them. She said the mood was good, drinks were ordered, they were listening to music.
Nikita Hand described going into the bedroom at one point. This was at a time when Conor McGregor was using the toilet, and she described how he turned around, made a lewd comment, and she just brushed it off, didn't make a big deal out of it, returned to the living room area to continue the party. Now, not long after that, she ended up alone in the bedroom with Conor McGregor, and by her account, she said that Conor McGregor tried to kiss her, that he was rubbing her face, that she resisted. She felt very uncomfortable.
He tried to kiss her. She wasn't interested. She said that she knew his partner, Dee Devlin. She herself had a partner, that she was on her period and she wasn't interested at all.
She said that she wouldn't have sex while she was on her period. She had a tampon in. She certainly wouldn't have had sex in those circumstances. But she said that Conor McGregor wasn't taking no for an answer.
She said that they were both dressed when he then pinned her onto the bed. She was trying to fight back, and at one point she had her hands up against her chest trying to push him off.
At that stage, we heard that she actually sustained an injury to one of her breasts that actually came from her wristwatch as she was holding her hands up to her chest to try to hold Conor McGregor off her. She said the more that she fought and the more that she struggled, the more that he seemed to like it.
She bit Conor McGregor. She said that he didn't like that when she did that, he flipped her around and he started choking her from behind. And she said that he did that 3 times.
She said in court that at one point during the attack, she looked at the bed post and she thought of her daughter. She thought she wasn't going to survive the attack.
She also alleged that it was at this point in time, after choking her 3 times, that Conor McGregor said something to the effect of, Now you know what it felt like when I was in the octagon and I had to tap out 3 times.
She said that the rape itself seemed to go on forever, but she was just numb during it. She described it as being very aggressive, him being aggressive up until the point he raped her, and then very aggressive during the rape as well.
But eventually it was over, and after that, she said that Conor McGregor asked her to lie down with him and go to sleep.
She then woke up in a panic, she said, and she went to her bag and she checked her phone and she texted her then partner, Stephen Redmond, who was referred to throughout the trial as Stee.
She accepted that in that moment she lied to her boyfriend about where she was, and she told him that she was very drunk and that she was having a great time. She said she then went into the living room area. She noticed that everyone was looking to leave when she wanted to keep the party going, because in Nikita Hand's evidence, she said that initially she didn't remember the rape. She didn't remember what had happened to her, that it only started to come back to her hours later, and she thought it was odd that everybody was leaving. She wanted the party to keep going.
They ultimately left the room and went down to the car park in or around 6:15, and Conor McGregor and Danielle Keely left. She ultimately decided to stay with James Lawrence. They're seen on the CCTV footage for a considerable amount of time in the underground car park, going back into the elevator, going up, going down, going into the reception area, and then finally getting back into the penthouse suite.
She had made a comment to James Lawrence in relation to, why do you guys turn a blind eye to what Conor McGregor does to women? And this was at a point where the rape was coming back to her, the details of what Conor McGregor had done to her in that room. And she said that James Lawrence put his head in his hands and he couldn't believe it, that he was in the room next door as all that was happening. And that was obviously Nikita Hand's account, that James Lawrence clearly had a very different version of events.
She said that James was very nice to her, that they had gotten some food together and they had talked for a few hours before they eventually left. Her next clear memory is really waking up in a taxi and a taxi driver asking her for money and her paying him. She needed to give the keys of the salon back to her manager, Emer Brennan.
So she actually sent Emer Brennan, her manager, a number of messages to say that she had been raped. She did identify her attacker. She said that she had been raped by Conor McGregor. She said she was black and blue, she was battered and broken, and she called over to Emer Brennan's house late that night. She got the taxi to drop her off there.
Emer Brennan gave evidence that she was in a very distressed state, that she had an awful lot of bruises on her, and Emer Brennan took photos of some of her bruises. Now, those photos were ultimately deleted.
She said that after that she did go home and she did tell her partner what had happened, that she'd been raped.
We know exactly what she said to her partner because we ultimately heard a very lengthy 45-minute recording of this conversation.
I remember thinking that that was quite odd, but in fairness to her then boyfriend, what he was trying to do was get the most contemporaneous account of what had happened to her, because he was really pushing for her to go to the Gardaí. He didn't want whoever had done this to get away with it. He said, that's not the world that we live in anymore. You can't do this and expect to get away with it.
The next morning, she went to her mother's house. She told her mother that she'd been raped. She was very concerned about a tampon that was wedged inside her vagina, that she wanted to get this sorted and forget about everything else. And her mother said she couldn't do that. She couldn't just forget about everything. Her mother rang an ambulance.
When the paramedics showed up, they gave evidence that Nikita was in a very distressed state. There was an advanced paramedic there, Ethna Scully, who had years of experience, more than 16 years of experience. And she told the court that Nikita had extensive bruising and she hadn't seen someone so bruised in a very long time. Ethna Scully and her paramedic partner, Neil Dempsey, brought Nikita Hand to the sexual assault treatment unit in the Rotunda Hospital. Now, when she got there, she was examined by Dr. Daniel Kane. He also said that Nikita had a multiplicity of bruises, but again, her chief concern was about that tampon still inside her. And he said he'd examined more than 300 women as part of his job, and he had never encountered a retained tampon after sex.
He said it was 5 to 6 inches, the right-hand side of her cervix. He said he had to use forceps to remove it. Going by his report and what he said in court, Nikita Hand was black and blue from head to toe.
Nikita had again insisted that she wasn't going to make a formal complaint, but on the 5th of January 2019, she went and made her first formal complaint to Gardaí.
Nikita Hand gave evidence that she initially tried to go to Gardaí just before Christmas, but she said she couldn't do it. She had a panic attack. She just wanted to get through Christmas for the sake of her daughter, who would have been quite young at the time. And then on the 5th of January 2019, she went to Gardaí to make a formal complaint. Gardaí then interviewed Conor McGregor on the 17th of January 2019.
He arrived at Dundrum Garda station by arrangement with his solicitor. He had a prepared statement denying the allegations made against him. He was asked over 100 follow-up questions and he answered no comment to each and every one of them. Now, he did make a second statement, a prepared statement, again prepared with the assistance of his solicitors, and this was after the Gardaí showed him the photographs of the extent of injuries that Nikita Hand had. He said that he was shocked by them. He claimed that he had not caused those injuries, and he wondered at that point if she maybe had sex with somebody else. And that's how James Lawrence enters the equation.
The complaint against James Lawrence is a very unusual one. He went to Gardaí himself and he claimed that he had had sex with Nikita Hand twice that day. Now, Nikita Hand herself had initially said that her and James Lawrence got on very well when they were in the hotel together, that he was being very nice to her, that he was trying to calm her down because she was panicking in the aftermath of the rape, and she had no issue with him. And she said she was very shocked when he went to Gardaí, claiming that they had had sex consensually twice that day.
Nikita Hand had no recollection of having sex with him, so if that had happened, clearly she wouldn't have been able to consent to it if she was so incapacitated by the alcohol and drugs that she had. And that is rape 101. You know, you can't consent to something if you don't have the mental capacity to do that.
Her barrister put it to James Lawrence that he was entered to muddy the narrative, as it were, muddy the waters. And it was put to him that he might have been putting himself up as a patsy or a fall guy for Conor McGregor. And he said that no, he wouldn't do that, because why would any man put themselves up for the rape of a woman?
The Garda investigation ultimately concluded and they made a recommendation to the Director of Public Prosecutions, the DPP. They wanted to press charges against Conor McGregor and James Lawrence.
And a file was sent to the Director of Public Prosecutions. They wrote to Nikita Hand the summer of 2020 and they told her they would not be proceeding with charges. They said that one of the reasons was the amount of drugs and alcohol that had been consumed during the period in question. They said that the CCTV evidence was a problem. And they said that the second suspect, James Lawrence, was also a factor. So her second port of call was to consult a solicitor and look at the possibility of taking a civil case.
A woman who alleges she was raped by the MMA fighter Conor McGregor said she felt devastated and let down by the DPP decision not to prosecute the case. 35-year-old Nikita Hand has taken a civil case against the star and another man, James Lawrence of Rafters Road in Drimnagh, who both deny the allegations.
Nikita Hand herself took to the stand that afternoon and started to give her evidence. I think it became clear that this was going to be huge.
Conor McGregor's legal team very much felt that the CCTV was the crown jewel for them. Remy Farrell, senior counsel for Conor McGregor, said to Nikita Hand that the evidence of the CCTV flatly contradicts her account.
The defence really wanted to show with the CCTV Nikita Hand's behaviour in the hours after the rape. They made many suggestions that she didn't look like someone that had just been raped because she was touching both Conor McGregor and James Lawrence. She didn't appear to be in any serious distress.
She didn't dial 999 immediately afterwards. She didn't go running down the corridors of the hotel to raise the alarm or looking for help. But in her evidence, she said that she didn't initially remember what had happened, and it's not that unusual for people suffering from severe traumatic episodes to not remember events in the immediate aftermath.
They were also trying to point out the fact that she had a drink in her hand at one point in time and that she appeared to be quite drunk in the footage itself. Now, again, this is something Nikita didn't shy away from. She admitted that she looks drunk in the footage, but again, she said that doesn't change what ultimately happened in the room between her and Conor McGregor.
She said it was very difficult for her to watch, and at some stages she even refused to watch it back because it was played several times, and she said it just didn't look like her, and on top of that she couldn't remember any of it.
What she saw in the footage was someone who was extremely drunk, a very, very drunk woman. She said she found it very upsetting, very distressing, because in it she saw someone who needed help.
The recording was introduced by the defence because in their minds it advanced their argument that she was lying about all of this, and that was at the core of Conor McGregor's defence.
She was heard clearly crying, sobbing, and was reluctant to tell Steve the finer details of what had happened. She said that she couldn't say who was responsible.
She repeatedly said that she did tell him lies. She didn't want to tell her partner the full truth of everything that had happened, but she said it didn't change what had happened to her. She knew what happened to her up in that room, and she said, lying to my boyfriend is not a crime, and it doesn't change what happened to me.
But in fact, when you listen to the recording, and it was played in full in court, it actually advanced her case more than I think it helped the defence's.
It was a very powerful piece of evidence because it brought the jury into that very dramatic moment between Nikita Hand and her boyfriend. It was the next best thing to being there in the room with them, and you could really hear her distress. You could hear how upset she was, how frightened she was, how traumatised she was. It gave testimony to all of that, and it corroborated a lot of detail that she would say later about being choked, about being bruised, about trying to fight him off.
There were 3 really strong pieces of medical evidence, from the bruising to the tampon to the PTSD.
I think coupled together the evidence of Etna Scully, you know, an advanced paramedic saying this was one of the worst cases she'd ever seen. Then you had Dr. Daniel Kane in the rotunda also suggesting this is one of the worst he'd ever seen, that he had to remove the tampon using a forceps, and that ultimately he said that Miss Hand's account to him, which was quite detailed about being put in a chokehold, about being violently raped, her injuries, everything that he had seen was consistent with her account. And then you have one of the country's most respected psychiatrists, Dr. Anne Leader, who also diagnosed Nikita Hand with PTSD, and that everything was consistent with the account that she'd given.
Clearly, in these types of cases, there are always going to be seeds of doubt, and that's why it's so hard to prove them in a criminal court where a jury's decision has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. But every time one of those seeds of doubt was planted, I kept coming back to the medical evidence, and I suspect the jurors did too.
The jury had been deliberating from the day before, and there was a lot of speculation about whether or not there was going to be a verdict on the Friday.
After 4 o'clock that afternoon, then we were told that they had finally reached a verdict, and the jury were summoned back into the room, everyone packed into the room.
When it became clear that a verdict was imminent, I noticed Conor McGregor scrambling back into the courtroom. It was almost full by the time he got back in there. He was out of breath. He took his seat again between Dee Devlin and his mother. He took 2 very large inhales of breath as he looked to the heavens. He looked like a worried man.
The jury passed their issue paper to Mr. Justice Alex Owens, and they had 2 questions to answer. Did Conor McGregor assault Nikita Hand, and did James Lawrence assault Nikita Hand? And to the Conor McGregor question, they answered yes. And to the James Lawrence question, they answered no.
In breaking news this evening, Nikita Hand has won her case against Conor McGregor. Her civil case against the MMA fighter ended in dramatic fashion within the past hour, as the jury found in her favour.
Do you have a reaction? Do you have an apology to the women's?
The impact of the Conor McGregor trial has been really significant, and we've seen that in Dublin Rape Crisis Centre. During the course of the trial, calls increased by around 20%, but there was a 50% increase in first-time callers. Once the verdict was announced, the number of calls absolutely skyrocketed. We are so grateful that Nikita used her voice in that way to encourage people to come forward and to speak to Dublin Rape Crisis Centre. The thing about sexual violence is that people feel shame and blame, even though that they are the victims, and that is a devastating burden.
The jury awarded damages against Conor McGregor in favour of Nikita Hand to the tune of just under €250,000. Conor McGregor at one point in his career was one of the highest paid sports people on the planet. €250,000 is a lot of money, but not to Conor McGregor, who has very, very deep pockets. But the financial consequences of what he did to Nikita Hand in the Beacon Hotel is far-reaching.
You've seen supermarkets and off-licences remove his alcohol products from their shelves. You've seen murals of him being painted over. In terms of legacy, this is all out there now. It's a matter of public record, and I don't think that anybody would want to be remembered for this.
Conor tweeted that he would be appealing the decision. He called the sum of money that he's found to be liable for modest. He subsequently deleted that tweet, and then kind of into the late hours there were a number of tweets that were, I would say, controversial in nature and were directed at Miss Hand, and they were ultimately deleted as well.
Aside from the financial cost, there is also the reputational damage. Conor McGregor, before the jury was sworn in this case, was already a very divisive character, but if his reputation was on the ropes before this case, you certainly feel that Nikita Hand delivered the knockout blow in relation to this. At the outset of this trial, we learned that Nikita Hand was suing Conor McGregor specifically for €750,000 for rehousing, €1 million for loss of earnings. Because of the psychological effects of what happened to her, she hasn't been able to return to the workplace. Now, in relation to the €750,000 that she was seeking for rehousing, what the jury were not aware of, because the judge felt that it wasn't relevant to the case that they had to decide, was that in June of this year, Nikita Hand's home in Drimna was broken into.
Masked men broke into her home, they smashed windows, and in the process her partner was actually stabbed.
Conor McGregor is not being blamed directly for this particular attack, and indeed it was actually said by Ms. Hand's own counsel that they were not alleging that he had anything to do with it personally himself, but they would be alleging that the attack was carried out by supporters of Conor McGregor.
But nonetheless, Nikita Hand has said several times that she has been living in fear.
After all was said and done, she came outside to the gathered media from near and far, a story that had attracted national and international headlines, and she gave one of the most powerful statements that I have ever heard outside of a courthouse.
She had a really, really powerful message, and it's a message that I think resonated with everybody. It really inspired survivors as well. We see that 50% increase in first-time callers, that really was a strong reaction to what Nikita Hand was saying, that she was vindicated in the end and justice was served, and Dublin Rape Crisis Centre wish her the very, very best in her future life.
I would like to start off by saying I'm overwhelmed and touched by the support I have received from everybody. I want to thank my partner Gary, who has been so supportive for the last 4 years and has held my hand throughout this trial every day and every other day. I want to thank my mum and all my family and friends. Lastly, I want to thank my daughter Freya, who I'm most grateful for. She has given me so much strength and courage over the last 6 years throughout this nightmare to keep on pushing forward for justice. I want to show Freya and every other girl and boy that you can stand up for yourself if something happens to you, no matter who the person is, and justice will be served. To all the victims of sexual assault, I hope my story is a reminder that no matter how afraid you might be, speak up, you have a voice, and keep on fighting for justice. I know this has impacted not only my life, my daughters, my family and friends tremendously, and it's something that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. But now that justice has been served, I can now try and move on and look forward to the future with my family and friends and daughter.